QB Chase.
On this computer. Good morning, listeners, and welcome back to another very special episode of the Matter Mentality podcast, where we talk all things training, nutrition, and psychology to optimize your performance. Today, I am very excited for a chat, and we'll get into how this kind of came full circle for me. But we've got Dr. Pat Ivey on the show, a man who's worn a lot of hats. He's played defensive end in the NFL back in the 90s, playing with teams like the Lions, the Packers, and the Broncos. He's gone back to school. He's got degrees in exercise science and sports psychology. Since then, has become a leading coach in strength and conditioning, and is now, I would say, leading the forefront of leadership and sports psychology and performance coaching at the highest level, as well as authoring the book, The Table. Mate, I am thrilled to have you on the podcast. I'm looking forward to what we're going to jump into today. How are we doing? Thank you for giving us your time.
Yeah, absolutely, Ben. I'm excited about this. I want to jump into it, and we can start wherever you want to start and take this wherever you want to go.
Man, I'm looking forward to it. I got a few grilling questions at the end though, because I know you're a man that likes to barbecue. So I've got a few fun questions at the back, but we'll get straight into the deep stuff first and give some listeners some takeaways. One of the things I really want to get started with is you've worn a lot of hats, and this will tie into kind of some a bit more exploration around identity in the later parts of the conversation. But where you are now in your career, how does Coach Pat identify himself? When someone asks you what you do, and someone says, you used to be an NFL player, you used to be a student, you've got these degrees, you've got a master's and a doctorate, you're a leader and an author. Like, what defines you, and how do you define yourself when you come into these conversations?
I would say I try to simplify it because, like you said, when you do wear a lot of hats, it can get complicated for some people. They want to know, what hat are you wearing? What lane are you in? Some people want you to be in a silo. And for me, I just say I'm a leader in sport. And sometimes I've led in the weight room. Sometimes I've led on the outside of the weight room. Sometimes I've led in an office. Sometimes I've led in a boardroom. But where I enjoy putting my time in is in leadership positions in sport. And however I can do that, even if it's working with the hospital system, is still about how can we have a better relationship to take care of our student athletes that might help you to have a better relationship of taking care of your patients. So, and it is all about leadership with me. It is all about collaboration. It is all about trying to develop something or develop people and advance.
I love that. I love that. I think there's an undervalue in our space at the moment on what actual leadership looks like. We see, coaches want to wear the C on their chest. They want to be that guy that's, whether it's over in America with the development system you guys have, where I want to get into a head coaching role or an S&C coaching role, a defensive coordinator role, or even over here, looking at the performance or the body composition coaching space. Everyone wants to wear that C, but they don't understand the role and the responsibility that comes with that level of leadership. Like, to me, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Is, to me, once you start down that journey of being a coach, you become a lot more of a role model, a leader, a guide, a mentor. Guys, some clients, I become more like a father figure to them in some aspects than I am just a coach telling them what to do and what to train. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that in today's sort of like coaching landscape. Are we throwing that term, that coach, around a bit too liberally?
Maybe in some cases. For me, a coach is someone that helps something to get from point A to point B. And what their point A is, or where their point A is, and where their point B is different for different people, different circumstances. A lot of times people want to place blame on someone for not getting a job done. So you want to have someone that you can point a finger to and say, well, that's the leader if it's not going well. Also, on the flip side, if it is going well, who should get the credit? But there are a lot of skills that you need to be in those positions. It's not just it shouldn't just be about someone appointing you to a position or there was an opening and you applied for it. There should be skills that you have to fill that role. What I find challenging is a lack of skills in people that pick people to be the leaders or head coaches. I think that's one of the areas we can continue to improve. I think at least my experience in America is that a lot of former athletes became coaches, then became administrators. That's not necessarily the case anymore. Now you have people that have different skill sets and backgrounds, whether it's business background or public relations, or these people find themselves in leadership positions in sport. And not to knock anyone, it's that their experience didn't come from the field or the court or the pitch. It didn't come from running a team meeting and standing in front of athletes and being accountable to the
Hmm.
words that you're telling these athletes. If you've never been held accountable by an athlete and they looked at your plate when they passed by in the dining hall because you told them how to eat fruits and vegetables and eat lean, if and they didn't look at your plate and say, Coach, what about your plate? You won't understand the accountability at the highest level when it comes to working with athletes in sports. So some of the decisions that get made, people don't have that background in what and how it's going to impact and affect the athletes. Sometimes I get asked, well, maybe we should poll or survey the athletes and see what they want. It's like, I'm sorry, no disrespect, but I don't feel I need to do a poll to ask the athletes what they want when I lived it for so long
Hmm.
and I listened to them for so long. And that's one of the skills I think as leaders that's missing. A lot of times we think, oh, well, I'm in a leadership position. I need to prepare my speech. Like, but did you prepare the time it takes to listen to understand what to put in your speech or your presentation? And I think that's missing.
Yeah, I love that answer. It speaks to the power of experience when working with people. It's an undervalued skill as a coach, as a leader, as a mentor, whatever it may be that your field craft is. To have that background of experience, to be able to put yourself in someone's shoes and say, I know what you're after, I know what you need, especially in times when perhaps you don't know what you need. Like if you're the athlete and you might not know what's best for you, but someone that can say, I've been there, I understand where you are, let me help you. Or like even if you don't ask for the help, I'm going to tell you what you need because right now, you just don't know. Sometimes
Mhm.
we're lacking that, and I completely see where you're coming from in that regard. That just we need to have that to a degree, that background experience where you can say, I've got you even when you don't understand it. I'm going to help you make that decision even if you don't think it's the right one. I know that it is. You can't admin your way to that decision.
Mhm. Right. You can't. And I think it's important for administrators to know that coaches need continual development. Everyone needs continual professional development. If I'm a strength and conditioning coach, I need constant development to learn techniques, skills, different equipment, modalities, methodologies, philosophies. I need to continue to learn and develop. As a sport coach, the sport coach needs to continue to learn and develop, not just the X's and O's or the technical or the tactical, but the essential skills, the skills of being able to connect with people, understanding motivation. So many times coaches have challenges with their athletes and their motivation, but they don't understand motivation. They don't understand the science of motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think and we don't have enough people that evaluate coaches that can say, hey, how are you developing as a coach?
Mm-hmm.
Other than are you speaking to more donors to bring more money in? Like it needs to be what are you doing to develop better connections with your athletes and lead your coaching staff? And I think those are skills that are lacking.
It's a great segue here, the way you've kind of structured this. It'll lead to another question I was going to touch on, but your dissertation, I believe it was for your PhD, was actually on the role and behaviors of the coach and the impact on athlete burnout. That was your dissertation for your PhD in sports psychology, which I think is fantastic. And it ties into a concept that I really try to apply and understand for both myself and as a coach to my clients, which is goal orientation theory, the idea around ego versus mastery culture and ego versus mastery goals. How do you see that? Whilst this wasn't going to be my next question, I think it's a great sort of segue here. How do you see that when coaches want to talk about motivation, when coaches like, you just got to want it more, where's your discipline? Where's your hard work? Just get up and get after it. When we've got things like NIL deals coming into college sport now and guys are getting externally motivated, you did a really great post recently on self-determination theory. I think we went back and forth a few times there. And we're seeing a difference. Whilst in Australia, I try to keep up with some of the collegiate sort of direction. We're seeing a different sort of athlete come through now because they're not motivated by the love of just making it to the pro status. They're seeing a love of the NIL deal that's producing, 7 figures, 6 figures, anywhere in between there. You're going to have a different athlete because that motivation now isn't just pure love. It's external contracts, it's financial reward and incentive, it's the likeness right on social media and TV. How important is that concept in regards to supporting the athlete journey and preventing that burnout? To have that understanding of true motivation, what the motivational spectrum looks like, what self-determination theory is all about. How big is that role for a coach, and is that something that is lacking?
So, difference between college and pro. College right now, I don't know what the average career is of an athlete at one school. I don't know what the average. I would guess 2 years might be the average right now. I don't know for sure. I would love to see some data on that. But professional, we know the average career is 3.5 years. But you have professionals on that team that are 10, 12, 15-year veterans in pro sports. So when you enter the league as a rookie, there you might be sitting next to someone that has over a decade of experience as a pro athlete. So when they say something to you, when they give you some advice, it is heavy. You have to understand, like, wow, so I got here and I got a big contract and I want to spend a lot of money and buy jewelry and things like that. But this veteran next to me is saying, hey, wait a second. You got here, but that's not going to keep you here. Let me show you what's going to keep you here. You don't have that in college. You don't have the old veteran that's saying, hey, I mean, I've been here for 4 years and that is not happening. You have some that are in programs for 4 or 5 years, but when you're turning over half of your roster every year and you go into a different team, those connections, that amount of experience isn't quite the same. So you don't have the older veteran saying, yes, your talent and skill got you here, but that's not what's going to keep you here. Your attitude is what's going to keep you here. Your work ethic, your diligence, like here, all of these intangible things is what's going to keep you here. Whereas the college athlete, you got a nice NIL deal, you got a nice contract, you got a nice car, and then, oh, wait a minute. I have to actually work. I have to put the time in. I got to still develop a relationship with my coach. In the pros, that veteran will go, hey, you don't want to go about it like that, Rook. Rookie, Rook for short. You don't want to go about it like that, Rook. You're going to find yourself back home really fast. And all of a sudden, you'll change your behavior and thought pattern and your motivation. Like, oh, my motivation was to do it for the cars and the jewelry. The old veteran is saying, hey, that's not going to keep you here, because everyone has the car and the jewels. And there are people here who have more cars, bigger jewels than you. And guess what they have that you don't have yet? They know how to work it. They know how to work the system. They know how to play the political game here to stay here. You don't know that yet. And I think you're going to have college athletes that eventually will learn from others' mistakes, but they won't learn at the level that the pros learn from because of those old vets.
And you think that becomes now, whether it be the offensive defensive coordinator coaching teams, whether it be the head coach, is that a role that they're now having to step into to say, hey, it's time to get your head on a swivel, it's time to actually check yourself a little bit, because football does draw big personalities, basketball does draw big personalities. So you got that young hotshot that's been nothing but a superstar in his high school team coming to the college level, and then obviously want to go on the pro level. They're coming in with high money deals and ego. And as we know, the difference between ego goals versus mastery goals, there's a significant difference in longevity of motivation. Is that
Absolutely.
is that going to become the coach's role, do you think, to say, look, I know you're great and that's cool, but if you don't check that attitude and actually start to improve, you're not getting to that professional level, or you can just take your money and leave. Like, is that going to be their new, I guess, lighthouse position in a way, or what are we seeing here?
I think what you're going to find more often than not right now in college is, hey, if you don't want to get it, next person up. Uh, where in the pros they might be a little bit more invested, and the rosters aren't as big. Rosters are going to be twice as big in college versus the pros in certain sports. Um, it's going to be a leveling out as well. So even the concern I had this conversation maybe a week ago with someone. I said, probably 10, 15 years ago, we were all warning our athletes about social media and they're going to ruin their careers if they made the wrong post or put up the wrong sort of information. Well, that an issue today? I don't think it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there mistakes happen, yes, but generally speaking, we thought that the majority of the athletes were going to be going down this path of ruining their careers because they were making inappropriate posts. That's not an issue. I think the same thing is going to happen with NIL as well. I think it's already happening. So they are going to learn from others' mistakes. But unfortunately, they're probably limited to that in terms of their learning. They haven't developed the relationships with the support staff. When I talk to some support staff, and they feel like their athletes that they work with now are on 8-month contracts in college. So how do you develop a relationship with someone to say, hey, you're going about that a little wrong. I know you don't know me that well, but I want the best for you. I know you've only known me for 2 months and you're only going to be here for another year maybe, but it it there's a hole in there somewhere. How do we fix it with the motivation? Coaches have to find different ways to motivate the athletes, right? You don't have as long of a
Mm-hmm.
runway to say, hey, we've got time. No, we don't have time. You're on a 1-year contract pretty much, and you can leave and go with no clause in your contract, no buyouts or anything. You can just leave. Some athletes can come in and just take the money and leave. I know contracts are being written now where that you get away from that, but I don't know how coaches go about motivating an athlete that comes in with so much extrinsic and external motivation. Do you put more external and extrinsic motivation on that athlete because they are only there for a shorter period of time? Maybe. If you're trying to get them to convert over to internal and intrinsic motivation and you don't have enough time to help them to become more self-determined, are you wasting your time as a coach? Are you preparing them for someone else?
Yeah.
These do you need to come in with a certain skill set and level and talent initially to contribute, and then you get the attention, and if you don't, then you might leave.
Yeah, it's a tough question once you start throwing in the paychecks, especially the size of these NIL deals. It used to be, from what I've done, I put out articles and stuff like that for our website, and I remember writing what it meant to be successful in American sport, and it was something like 3% of all high school athletes, which back in 2020 when I wrote it was about 1.5 million high school athletes were playing high school football, and it went up to 3% of that made it to college, and then I think it was 1% of that went to the pros.
Mhm.
It's difficult when you're already coming in, like you're the 97th percentile of good to make to that college level, to be in that performance environment. It's hard to then tell that young gun that's coming up with I was the top dog in my arena at school in the high school region I played in, whether it was down in Florida football, Virginia football, it didn't matter wherever it was. You're coming into college, you're already in that top 3%. Controlling someone's ego and trying to reforge it into more intrinsic love of the sport and purely driving that love for the game and just getting better as a human. When you've got a 7-figure NIL deal, that's a hard ask for any coach to work with.
It is, and when you have athletes that are making more in 1 week, 1 month than your support staff are making in a year,
Mm.
that's challenging as well. It's an interesting dynamic because you can, if you're good and you've got a good skill set, you can still work to hold athletes accountable at a pretty high level. You can still be very demanding. Being demeaning now, like that's not an option. Disrespecting an athlete, that is not an option. You have to, as a coach, elevate your level of coaching. You have to understand there is money and a lot of money involved, and how do you handle those situations? Well, the good thing is, coaches, you're professionals. You're getting paid as well. You understand benefits. You understand insurance. You understand paying your bills. It's just, so how do we now have that same level of respect we have for each other with the athletes that are much younger, who are trying to figure it out, but they also have agents and parents and people that come along with them. How do you manage all of that? That is what I think we're all trying to figure out.
I want to loop this back a bit here because you've got an interesting journey yourself. And when I say interesting, I mean in the highest regard. I mean, you've followed these pathways before the NIL deals and before the social media platforms, and I think that lays a great foundation to understand what your experience speaks to, and the risks and the pathways that these athletes will be facing. You've played, as we sort of discussed in the introduction. You've played for teams like the Packers, for the Lions. You played for the Broncos. You went through that college route. You How would you speak to that athlete now from the experiences you had back then? What are some key lessons that you're teaching? That let's take the money aside, let's take the NIL deals out of college football and high school football. We're going into the pros. You might not be promised, yeah, you've made great money in college, but you might not be promised a 5, 10 year deal in the NFL. You might not be promised a guaranteed contract of $100 million when you get to the NFL. What are we what are we not teaching youngsters coming through now to prepare for that? Because you've had some great conversations around post-career identity, what that
Mhm.
feels like, that tension and transition out to who you are after the fact.
Right.
I view my role as a post-athlete coach to teach and pass on the lessons that I learned from sports. I think you follow a very similar philosophy in the way you do things, in what I've read and seen. What do you speak to that young athlete? What can you give them where it's like, I've been in your shoes without the big money, and this is what it is?
Yeah. When I sit down with an athlete and they're in passing and they're sitting down at the lunch table or whatever, I'll ask them where are they from, what position do they play, and then that'll usually give me some indication of where I can go with the conversation. And then I'll say, hey, you mind if I ask a personal question? They'll usually say yes. They'll say no, they don't mind. I'll say, what do you do when you're done playing? I was
Mm.
like whatever level you want to play, what do you want to do when you're done with that? And that question hits them really hard. Like, I'm just focused on what I'm doing now. It's like, yeah, I get it. That's why you are here. But what do you want to do when you are done playing? Like after the type of career you want to have, whatever it is, Some know and some don't know. And for those, whether they know or don't know, I said, well, how old will you be when that happens? And usually that's around mid 30s. Like if you had the ultimate career, I
Hmm.
was like, you do know you're gonna need more meaning and purpose in life to carry you for the next 40, 50 years.
Hmm.
And and then it will kind of set in um, for them. Like they'll really be engaged in that conversation. I said, well, you might want to think about it. And I can take it from there. Like, hey, well, we should sit down and talk some more at a later time. So next time you see me, just grab me and put some more thought into it. So usually I'll leave it like that, and then I'll see them the next time. Hey, so you thought more about what you want to do when you're done playing after you have an awesome career, like All American and Hall of Fame and all of that. Like, I mean, you say you want to do that, but you and I know 1%, maybe 2%, if you're at a really high level school, like you're going to get there. But getting there doesn't mean you're going to make it there.
Hmm.
That's the other thing. Like getting there is not good enough. Like you want to make it there. You want to be able to say, I've created generational wealth from the sport that I play. Like that's making it. So I'll stop there, Ben.
Man, I love your passion towards it because I get the same way. I think, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Sports psychology in the way which you kind of foster it in a team environment, a culture environment. There's a lot more philosophy to it as well. There's a lot more background. It's not just here's a theory or we're going to have a therapy session. It's more about like you kind of use your experience and background. That's why I want to touch on it a little bit because you have that background knowledge. You spoke about at the start. This is what it means to be a coach. It means to be a leader. You're trying to help someone get from point A to point B in whatever way that looks like. Your role when you step into that office or that room space with an athlete, it's more about nurturing, mentoring, and guiding through the premise of sports psychology. You're asking those deeper questions. I think
Hmm.
there's still athletes in sports where they perceive, I guess, because it's not a tangible field craft, right? You break an arm, you go to a physio or a doctor, and they tell you how they're going to rebuild it. You do your surgery, you go to the PT, he tells you how we're going to re-strengthen and get you back on the field. That's a craft you understand because it gets you back there. With sports psychology and performance psychology and psych in general, it's all up here, and it's all the game up here, it's all the perspective up here. And a lot of youngsters don't want to hear about that conversation of, well, what's after the fact. What do you look like after? But the way in which you position it is a lot more about purpose. It's about depth and emotional continuation, almost legacy level conversation that they've
Hmm.
perhaps never had. They haven't thought about what's my legacy when I'm done here? What's my purpose when it's all over? Because, I remember I had that same thought process. I used to play rugby league here at a decent level in Australia. And in my head, the average age of retirement was 30, 32. I'm playing that. So my new life doesn't even start until I'm 33. Well,
Hmm.
ironically, I had a car accident in 21, lost everything, couldn't play anymore, never had that prospect come to fruition. I'm only just now at the age where I perceive what my retirement would look like. I'm coming on 30, 32, 33, sorry, 33. And this is the age in my mind where I was like, now life starts for the second time. But, you're teaching that thought provocation, hey, what's next whilst they're in it, but still allowing them to enjoy being in it. I think that's a really powerful framework to really have them understand the benefits of sports psychology, but that philosophy side as well.
Yeah. I think some people are hesitant to engage in that type of conversation because they think that they might have the opposite effect on the athlete's motivation than what they want. They
Mm-hmm.
think, hey, if I talk to my athletes about what it is they want to do when they're done playing, then they're not going to be motivated to be the best athlete they can be here for me in this team. And that couldn't be further from the truth. You I remember we did some assessments of some of our athletes. We brought in a clinical counseling psychologist, did an assessment because as coaching staff, the thought was we have some athletes with some motivational issues, and
Mm-hmm.
we want to know what can we do that makes them want to just, you know, run through the brick wall for your coach and like pour all you can into this sport so we can win. And,
Hmm.
you know, and the, after the assessments were all taken, the results were in, he aggregated all the data and he said, out of all of these athletes, close to 40 athletes that we had done an assessment with, 40 of our top athletes, said there's only one with maybe questionable motivation. And the coaches were all taken aback, like, only one? Like, at that point, they were like, are you the real deal? You're going to come in here and say, we don't have a motivational issue. We brought you in here because we have a motivational issue with our athletes. And he said, no, you only have one that's questionable. The rest are all very motivated. And they were like, he said, now you do have another issue. Most of those athletes have a negative self-talk issue.
Mm.
And we're like, so at that point, coaches were like, negative self-talk. Like, what can we
What's
do
that?
about that? Yeah, what's that? What can we do about that? Like, if it's motivation, we can get on the line. We got up downs, we've got sprints. I'll get you motivated. Like, but you got a negative self-talk issue, like in the old school coach's mind is like, why are you being so mental then? Why? What do you mean? Do we need to get rid of them, or do we need? Do we recruit wrong? What do we need to do with these athletes who have all this negative self-talk? When the reality is most of our self-talk is negative,
Hmm.
and it's self-talk, so you don't hear it because it's internal. But everything, our environment is reinforcing it. And if you don't have the skills to replace negative thoughts with positive thoughts and the skill to recognize that you're having negative self-talk, then those become perpetual and you just keep recycling the same negative thoughts. And so what we had to do is teach them, okay, what are positive affirmations? How do we teach positive self-talk? How does the brain work?
Mm.
Uh, and so we spent time teaching them how the brain works. That that helped the coaches because what they needed to hear was emotions follow your thoughts, body language follow emotions. So it's thoughts, emotions, body language, and then it manifests itself physiologically. And then you take that into the next situation or play or conversation or whatever it is that you're doing. So once we taught the coaches, hey, if you see negative, bad body language, it is, or bad reactions and emotion, it's following negative thoughts.
Hmm.
And we taught the guys that the players, we taught all of our athletes, um, guys and girls, we taught all of our athletes that if you see that in your teammate, go pick them up,
Mm.
pat them on the back. Hey, you've got this. Don't worry about it. Get the next one. Or if you feel and sense that and you catch yourself with these negative thoughts, though you have to develop the skills and the skill of positive self-talk and how to replace those negative thoughts. So once everybody in the program learned that, I don't know what the percentage is of positive thoughts versus negative thoughts or neutral thoughts or anything like that. But it made a huge impact because we had the skills to be able to address the negative self-talk that looked like it was a motivational issue. Because if you think about it, what the coaches were talking about was reactions and attitudes and body language. Well, I don't know if these athletes really want it. It's like, no, their body language is just following negative emotions, which are following negative thoughts. And if we all can, as a whole program, learn this, develop these skills, and hold each other accountable, then we can create an environment where it looks like we have a bunch of motivated, intrinsically motivated athletes.
And did that once it all kind of clicked and gelled and everyone's on the same page, did that, I guess, as a byproduct, lead to that buy-in that the coaches were looking for? I think I know the answer, but I'm curious if that's kind of, what it actually led to, and all of a sudden the coaches are like, "Oh, we've got a tool here. We've got a system now that we can actually learn."
I would say the majority, you're always going to have some that are skeptical and late adopters, but the ones that jumped on board, their position groups were dominating, and those that weren't quite there, their athletes eventually got to a point where they were holding them accountable. And I'll
Mm.
give you an example. I remember in a game on the sideline, one of our All-American athletes, the coach was being negative, and the athlete recommended to the coach to go coach someone else and leave them alone until they came back. And then they had positive coaching cues to share with a positive coaching attitude. And I was standing right there and I was like, oh, wow, that's, I didn't know what to say. like, like, wow, we've taught this, and the player is absolutely right. But I saw that coach swallow their pride, put their ego to the side, leave for a second, come back and start giving coaching cues that was going to help this All-American go out there and continue to dominate.
That is the sign of good coaching, though, to be able to take critique. There's that concept in leadership in corporate environments and office environments of the chain of screams, the top down screaming. But to be able to take, as a leader and as a coach in a position of authority, to take that feedback from those beneath you and then be able to internalize and say, actually, he's right. I need to leave this, come back, drop my ego, and be better. It's very easy. And everything, I haven't worked with any or spoken to any, but what I do know of collegiate, especially football, man, the coach's way is the coach's way. And it's very rare that you're going to talk back to the coach and him be like, no, you're right. That's true. So, I mean, what a coach to be able to do that. And yeah, he made a mistake and his attitude got in the way, but to be able to leave, take that sort of psychology approach and go, I actually do have to sit with this and come back and change my approach with this athlete. And then to do it in real time, that's a big deal.
In real time during the same game. It was amazing. Um, and the respect level that the players have for a coach that does that
Mm,
um, is everything you want as a coach.
mm.
It's everything you want. You want your athletes to respect you. And when they see you developing as a coach, there is nothing more respectable than that.
Mm. Now I want to circle back here because this kind of highlights, I can see the passion in the sports psych topics that you have. And I'll circle back here for a reason, because your educational pathway is not similar to mine in the sense of, I'm following the structured, laid out clinical behavioral science pathway to get to my degree to move into performance psychology. Your background is unique. After you're at the university collegiate level, you've done your degree, an undergraduate degree in hotel and restaurant management. You've then finished your career and moved into strength and conditioning. You got your NSCA. You've moved then into exercise science and health education. It was only then that you've done your master's and PhD in sports psychology for your doctorate. What led you to that decision? Because it's not straightforward. It's not a simple path. Like the health science, the psych science stuff is not a traditional pathway for an athlete, let alone the different sort of, I guess, stepping stones that you had. What in your career or perhaps your background led you to that? I want to understand this at the doctorate level to be able to impact athletes or leaders or coaches to make a difference. What was that?
I did not want to go back to school and I did not want to understand it at the doctoral level. I had to, though, because I had reached a point where we were on a path where several of us had been national strength and conditioning coaches of the year and had been on the same staff and had gone on to other schools and become national strength and conditioning coaches of the year. When it came to coaching and knowing the X's and O's, knowing sets and reps and how to coach up a bench squat, clean, Olympic lifts, um, programming, uh, progressive development, like I would put that up against anyone and what we were able to do, and what I was able to do as a director with these amazing coaches that were on staff. But it just wasn't enough.
Mhm.
We were getting to the championship games because we were developed. We were leaner, faster, and we were putting lean muscle mass on in season.
Mm.
Using a DEXA, we were able to measure it. We were doing all of those things, but we had an athlete at one point in time when we lost, I think the conference championship game, and he said, "What's missing?" Like, no one's bigger, faster, stronger, quicker. Like, we believe we're the best physical team every time we step on the field. Coach, what's missing? And at that point, I was like, I don't know. I think we turned over every rock to get every ounce of athletic ability out of our athletes. And it wasn't until I had continual conversations with a mentor, Dr. Rick McGuire, who was our head track coach at the time, who taught sports psychology, and he was a mentor of mine. And I would ask him constantly questions, and eventually he said, "Pat, the questions that you're asking and where you're at, we teach that in class." It's like, I appreciate that, coach, but I do not want to go back to school. I've got a full-time job, family. And he repeated, "We teach it in class, and I think you should consider it." And that's what led me. And so the first class I took was his. It was a sports psychology class. And I knew once I started something, I was going to finish it. But what was really amazing was the transformation that was happening, not just with me, but we were making real time adjustments
Mm.
based on what we were learning in class, because I wasn't the only one taking classes. There were several of us taking these classes, realizing the mistakes that we were making in real time, going back, fixing them the next day, and then getting acknowledged and praised by our student athletes for improving, which made them buy in even
Mm.
more, which made us want to learn even more and implement even more and create this perpetual state of improving and like challenging and demanding, but at the same time, very positive and productive. It was nothing easy about our workouts. It was nothing easy about the training. It was hard. It was tough. It was demanding. And our athletes wanted more.
Mm.
They wanted it all. We were giving them the skills of being mentally tough while we were putting them under the most extreme conditions in training. It's a beautiful culture to be a part of that
Mm.
you help to develop. And I think if any coach could ever feel that, because we felt the frustration of trying to get athletes to do certain things and it doesn't click for the athletes. But to know how the brain works, how the mind works, how motivation works, how focus, how you can teach it in skills, how you can teach emotional regulation and accountability and discipline, how you can teach these things and break it down into skills, just like any other technique on the field or in the weight room. As a coach, when you have these tools in your toolbox and you got the skills to use these tools, it becomes such an empowering position to be in.
And it ties back to, the reference we made at the very start of the podcast, which is ego versus mastery culture. When the team is seeing you guys as coaches and quote unquote superiors or higher ups, still seeking that development pathway, and in a realm that perhaps was foreign to you, or they saw you struggle through, to put in that hard work and go, I don't know this topic, but I'm going to go work my ass off to get there. That's going to show them, next time the next playbook comes out, there's a new system or there's a new way you have to read the structure. They're going to go, well, coach is over here doing a full-time job and study. I can do this if he can do that. He didn't want to go, but to make me better, he's taken on that application and he's taken that pathway. And like you said, it starts to create this real-time sort of feedback avenue that you don't really get anywhere else. You can only get it by the athletes seeing you work, you doing the work, you teaching them the skills, them seeing the skills work, and it just feeds this perpetual cycle of self-development, self-determination, and we're getting that intrinsic buy-in from the team. You're like, this is motivation in real time.
I can think of two situations that that really stand out to me based on what you just said. One, our starting quarterback gave me compliments on my development, and I was actually offended at first. Like, how dare you give me? What do you mean you're proud of me and my development, coach? Like, we've seen you grow and develop. We know you're trying. We know the language that you use. Like, you're working really hard to find the best language and the best words, and we really appreciate it. We just want to say keep it up, like, and just say thank you. Like, that was mind blowing. And the second thing that was very impactful to me. I remember we had a training session that morning. We were at breakfast. I think I had my notes out because I was getting ready to take a statistics exam,
Mm.
and players are walking by. Coach, what are you doing? It's like, hey, I got an exam, multivariate analysis. I was like, man, coach, hey, good luck, coach, on your test. It's like, oh, wow. Just that impact of your player telling you good luck on your test because you're taking class. Like, I just sat there at that moment and thought about that. It was like, what would the impact have been on me if I was an athlete and I saw my coach going back to continue to improve and grow? Man, it's that, I know the respect level and admiration I have for my coaches. And I think that would be another level of respect and admiration.
Do you think that feeds into how you do what you do now and why you kind of do it when you look back at the way you kind of coach now and the things you want to do? Does your experiences feed into the type of coach you want to be when you're looking back at those coaches going, man, imagine what I would have been like if I had this? One of my philosophies that I live by is I'm becoming the coach that I needed when I was 12, 16, 25. I'm more of a competitive bodybuilder now than a contact sport athlete, but I think of when I'm coaching and I've got a youngster in my hands and he wants to be molded into an elite athlete or a high performance athlete or a bodybuilder. I'm like, what a responsibility I have, because that's me 10 years ago. That's who I need to be, who I needed, because I see myself in this kid, in this youngster growing up and wanting to work on something elite. Does that feed into the way you go about your coaching philosophies, your strategies? I know in your book, the table, it's kind of a part of it, but I'm curious as to how impactful that is, I guess, in structuring your frameworks and your approach to coaching.
Absolutely. And I think it's twofold, I, maybe threefold. I want the athletes that are entrusted in our care to have the best experience they can have. I want the coaches to enjoy and to be the best equipped that they can be. I want them to have the tools, the skills to make that work. And for me, in the role that I'm in as an administrator, I want to make sure that the most frustrating aspects of coaching, I'm taking off of their plates as an administrator. So one of the some of the things that take you away from what you really love doing and coaching these athletes, as an administrator, I take great pride in, hey, don't worry about this, I'll take care of it. Call me when you're done with your coaching session. I should have something for you. that right there to have, I had that when I was a coach, but there are some things I didn't have when I was coaching that took me away from coaching. And I remember there were times when I was saying, hey, this is the most frustrating part of my job. It has nothing to do with coaching.
Mm.
And so as an administrator, I take great pride in trying to alleviate some of those things that are most frustrating for coaches, hoping they can be the best version of the coach they want to be so that the athletes can have the best experience that they want to have.
Yeah, there's power to how we coach it, but also like the reasons why. I think people need, and you've talked about this in your, spirituality is one of your key tables, the legs of your table. Spirituality, whether it be in a religious, faithful sense, whether it be purpose, or I personally feel this. If I could explain the existential level of drive that I feel to impact people at a greater level, to coach and do my job, I think it would overwhelm most people. If I actually put it on paper and showed them what it feels like to feel what I feel when I take that responsibility on, I think they would collapse under the sheer weight of what I think I feel. And that isn't to sound egotistical or it's when you introspectively understand, you're like, this is uh, a deeper purpose than me just having a trophy on my cabinet or me having a title next to my name. It's something deeper than that. And I think coaches need to really understand what the purpose is to why they're coaching, why they're doing it. What does it mean to them beyond I want a national title, I want a state title, I want to be the National Strength Association's best coach or best conditioning coach on the board. Like they're all cool accolades, but coaching comes with this responsibility and to a degree of power that you have to wield. And I think understand why it matters to you and why it means so much, because there's something else to coaching that just doesn't quite land with, oh, I just want to be national champion. That's cool. But what about the thousands of lives across your career that you'll impact? What about the viewers that will watch you perform on a Sunday or a Saturday or a Friday night? You guys, America buys into every level of sport. You got TV televised games for high school, collegiate, and professional level. As a coach, you're on display to the nation, regardless of what level you're coaching at. How are you wielding that? What do you take that responsibility as? What does it mean to you? Because to me, there's such a I'd love to see to kind of move towards the table, and I wanted to touch on that a little bit. How do you view that purpose for coaches? Because to me, that it's a powerful thing to understand your purpose as a coach, which is kind of what I was rambling on to get to. But it deserves it deserves a true build up, because to me, the role is so much more than just having a title next to your name. It's a deep responsibility and purposeful experience if you understand it properly. I'm curious, where you kind of see that. I know you've got a whole book on it, so I want to kind of, see how you view that.
I think a lot of athletes, most athletes get into sport because it's fun. They want to have fun. It's fun to be a part of sport. And then we that fun turns into something stronger for a
Mm,
lot of athletes, and it turns into the love of the game. A lot of coaches were former athletes that love the game.
mm,
So a lot of coaches, I don't think do it for the money initially. You initially do it because it is what you love to do and you can't see yourself doing anything else. And it's fun. It's you love what you're doing. It's fun. And then the things start happening. Life starts happening. Responsibilities, bills, opportunities, promotions. These things start happening, and then money becomes something that becomes more important. More important, not saying it's more important than anything. It just becomes more prominent. And I think if we can all just go back and look backwards and just say, okay, why did I get into this? What was my intent? What was my purpose? I think we can find that fun and love again in what we're doing, and then that passion and that purpose, and that can kind of refuel us and rejuvenate us, because and not get so bogged down on things like the NIL or whatever, transfer portal, or dealing with agents and parents. And if we just go back to, hey, I got it. Why did I get into this? Why was it was hard for me to go to sleep at night because my mind was racing around it. When I woke up in the morning, I was fired up to, I was tired, but I was fired up to go and do what I loved. And how do we make sure we don't lose that? How do we make sure that that core of who we are and what we're trying, some of us do it because we're trying to prove something to ourselves and others, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
But did we lose that along the way? Hey, I want to prove that I belong, that I can rise to the top, that I can be one of the best. There's nothing wrong with that, and I need to do it with other people. I need teammates, and I need to be a good teammate for this to all happen. But I think if we can just go back to that and just pause and remember and reflect, hey, I got into this for a certain reason. There's a reason for me why I tried to treat my assistants and people that worked with me with the utmost respect. There's reasons why. There one, I was treated a certain way by different coaches, like the way you should treat people, and then I was also in situations where we were treated like you shouldn't treat people, and I knew the type of coach and director I would want to be once I was in that position, and I always had to remember that. I always had to remember that, hey, I've made a promise, a spiritual promise of how I'm going to treat people. And if I ever break that promise, then this can all be taken away. So that's part of my motivation to to elevate to the highest level possible.
I couldn't agree more. I think it speaks to your appreciation for motivation. It speaks to your appreciation for self-determination. Just to go back to the love of what we do and why we do it, and the role of what being a coach is. You can't you can't go wrong. You can make a mistake, but you can't go wrong if the decisions you're making and the approaches you're taking and the desires that you have are based purely on the love of the game and loving seeing someone succeed. As a coach, if you're doing it purely to see the youngsters that you're developing succeed at life and not just their sport, if you're doing it
Mhm.
because you want to see them win,
Yeah.
you can't go wrong in a sense that the decisions might be, you might make mistakes, you might stuff up, you might drop the ball a few times as a coach, but no one's going to look at you and say, you shouldn't be in this seat. They're going to say, how do we get better? But as a coach, if you do that from the love of seeing others win, not just yourself, man, you can't go wrong. It's such a powerful seat to be in when people see that of you and you know that you live by that. I can't see it. I think this speaks to your book and the four pillars, the four legs that you hold up your table with.
Hmm.
If you can do that, man, you're in a good spot. It's hard to be a bad coach, not a perfect coach, but it's hard to be a bad coach if you live by those four pillars.
Hmm. Yeah. I agree with that, and we'll need help along the way.
Mm.
We can't do it by ourselves. I think some coaches get into trouble, burnout, when you don't have, like, you need to have your job, but you also need to have some recreation. You also need to have something where you can get your mind off of what it is that what you're really passionate about. And if it is the coaching and the sport, you still need to have this work life integration that turns into work life, some sort of rhythm where you can kind of manage everything that's happening. And when you have that, then you're more full and fulfilled, and then you can pour into others' cups because you have something to pour from.
I want to touch on that just quickly because I think you have this approach with the table. Obviously, each leg balances the table out. And I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it's the intention to have a perfectly stable table. I think it's just trying not to have a completely unbalanced and wonky table.
Hmm.
Now, some degrees in life where, like, let's say you want to get to that head coaching job, you want to get to that elite level as an athlete. In my opinion, and the way I kind of look at teaching quote unquote greatness or living by your greatness, there's going to be degrees of imbalance. You can't be at the highest level and remain balanced across social life, personal life, relationships, study, business, career, and also your athletic endeavors. There has to be sacrifices made along the way. Now, they have to be deliberate sacrifices under intentional suffering and forward focus, but you can't remain perfectly balanced at all times. Otherwise, you will, by definition, be average. You're averaging out your efforts and averaging out your focus. Where do you sit on that? Where do you see that tension between, high performance, greater outcomes, but also still remaining, I guess, in regards to the table, the metaphor of your book, that balanced position of the table? How do you see that, I guess, play a role in high level sport and getting to that next level?
Yeah, I don't believe in balance at all. Like I don't know what I've been able to balance ever in my life. Um, but I find ways to integrate things and I find ways to prioritize.
Mm,
And when I can do that, I can find some sort of rhythm to life. And then I get into a flow. And I think that's the point I try to get to is to get to that flow state, to get to that right here, right now. And that's something I ask my athletes all the time. Where are you? And the call and response is right here, right now, and to be in the
love that.
present. So there are times when, there are times when it's okay to look back in the past and reflect. And then there are
Mm,
times to look at the future and plan. But most of the time we're supposed to be right here in the present. And
mhm.
and that is where I try to live. So I'm not so concerned about my choices and the character and the finances and the after what I'm going to be doing after. Like there's a time for all of those things, but when I'm supposed to be on point, when I'm supposed to be interacting and delivering great performance, whether that's writing it now is writing an email or having a conversation with another administrator, or if it went up when I was coaching, it was leading a staff and then providing instructions and direction to athletes. If it was when I was an athlete, it was like, okay, you can't just stay in the weight room all day. You got to get out and run. You got to stretch. You have to, and some days you do more in one areas than others, and then you just kind of pick up those areas that need more attention, and you got to make those decisions sometime in the present. So I I don't have a good way to balance anything.
I love that because yeah, I definitely agree on the guys that I find ways to stabilize, I find ways to systemize, but man, for me to be chasing a professional pro card, we call it in bodybuilding, getting my undergraduate degree finished, going on to postgraduate honors and masters and get my doctorate, there's nothing balanced about that. Whilst also having a business that I run for myself, a podcast I run, clients I serve, and a fiance that we're in this business together. There's no balance in that. I don't have social life. I don't go out and get drunk. I don't party. Man, like I'm one of one. I know that that's an extreme case, but there's no balance in me getting to that doctorate in the next 10 years and still living the rest of the things that I do. There's no balance in that. There's seasons, but there's no balance.
Yes. Yeah. And the encouragement I would give you on the doctorate is one of the hardest things that I did. And I had to use this mindset of what brought me to the highest level of productivity in each moment. And sometimes when I needed to write 10 pages, it's like, how am I going to write 10 pages? I'm working 12, 14 hours a day. Like, how am I going to do that? It's like, well, can you write one page at a time? You've got 5 days to get this written. So if you write one page in the morning, one page at night, then that's 10 pages in 5 days. Like, oh yeah, it is. Sure, it sure is. Then there were times where like, how am I going to write one page? I am tired. It's like, well, can you write a paragraph? Like, I can. Well, if you can write three, maybe four paragraphs, that's a page. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. Then there were times when I was, how am I going to write a paragraph? It's like, well, I remember looking it up, like, how many sentences in a paragraph? Like, I was like, I don't know. If I can put 4 or 5 sentences together, then that's a paragraph. I was like, I can do that. Then there were days when the stress was so high. It's like, how am I going to write a paragraph? How am I going to write a sentence? It was like, I remember there were days when I was like, one word at a time.
Mm,
But it's the same parallel as what we teach our athletes. It's one play at a time, one
mhm,
possession at a time, um, one swing at a time, one pitch at a time.
mhm.
It's the same philosophy that it's like, well, if I can apply some of these things I'm teaching athletes to this personal journey of pursuing a PhD, like that's how I got it done. It's like one day at a time, get something done every day. If the stress and anxiety seems too high, break it down to a smaller component and get that done.
And how much do you think? I know my answer personally. I drew on, especially in the early days. I wasn't a great student in high school. I went to high school. I did in my subjects, A's and B's in the subjects that I loved. And I realize now I should have leaned into my hyper focuses more. But back then it was A's and B's in the things I loved and struggling in the things that I didn't. But I drew on my competitive history as a student from my athletic days. I took that to university. I was the front row of every class. I picked someone in the lecture hall that I didn't even know I was going to outwork them. They didn't even know we're having this conversation. But in my head, I'm like, I'm going to outstudy you. I'm going to out assignment you. You might get a better grade than me, but I'm going to put in more effort to get the grade. I don't even know your name, but in my head, I'm beating you. And that was the approach I took to university. And it got the ball rolling for someone who I'd never in a million years thought I would study a medical science or a health science, we call it over here, to be on that pathway of how do I do this? How do I make this work? Well, what's the thing I was good at? Sport. Let's draw on that. Let's take those parallels and put it into this endeavor. Did you find the same way for yourself? Like, that athletic, professional level athlete characteristics and go, I've got to bring this to get this doctorate done.
And I'll give you a specific example. There were some classes I took, and I couldn't understand what the professors were saying. I couldn't process it. I couldn't understand. There was a barrier, and the accents that were used in the classes. So, what do? As an athlete. You go back and watch film. And then I mean when I was taking we there was nothing being recorded in class. So but we did have YouTube. And I knew that I did know the subjects that we were covering. So I would go back and watch on YouTube the subjects that I was trying to learn in class but could not comprehend what was being taught until I found someone that was teaching the concept in a way that I could understand it. And as an athlete, that's exactly what you do. Sometimes you watch the starter if you're the backup. Sometimes you watch video. Sometimes you get up on the board and draw it out. Sometimes people are telling you what to do and you learn how to do it that way. So as an athlete, you have to find all of these ways to learn the concept so you can get out there and execute the play. For me, it was the same way. It was like, hey, I can't if I'm not able to pick it up on in the meeting room when we introduce the new play, then I better find another way
Mhm.
to learn the concept. Or else I'm not going to be playing. I'm going to be on the bench.
Mm. Yeah. It's something to be said, and I think it's an undervalued tool in sport is the lessons that traverse the field or court or arena that you're in. I think it's something that as performance coaches, as mindset coaches, as sports psychologists, as head coaches, we need to infuse our young athletes with these traits and these concepts that it's not just about using this on the field. It's not just about using this in the line of scrimmage. These skills, these traits, these abilities, they cross realms. they're useful in other domains that we can attack and sort of teach and utilize, whether it be in your next career, in your next endeavor, your relationships, friendships, study, finances. Like there's lessons inside sport that we as coaches get to teach if you teach them properly.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I, I think coaches are teachers, and we're just teaching sport. And I've also been told you can't coach what you don't teach.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to teach something, so you can coach it. And I think coaches are teachers.
Now, as you know, I said at the start of the episode, I'll ramble all day with you because this is what I love. I love this stuff, and my
Yeah.
listeners will know that and they'll appreciate that. But I know I've booked you in for a time. I've got a few rapid fire questions that I'll finish off with because this conversation will go for 4 straight hours if we don't stop it. Um, and that's what I love about. I can see your passion in the topic, which is it excites me because it means I'm seeing what the passion of our industry looks like in the future for myself. I'm going to be
Yeah.
passionate just as much as you are in what we're doing and what the role we have. But I've got a couple of questions that I want to give takeaways to our listeners
Okay.
that also gives you a little bit of a fire to sort of speak from. We've spoken a lot about motivation. We've spoken about your book. I'm going to recommend that people go buy it. I downloaded the ebook version. So that's going to go on our recommended reading list. I think it's a powerful book. What are some key tips you can give to athletes in any sport, whether it be for life, whether it be for their field craft, whether it be bodybuilding, powerlifting, NFL, college footballs, basketball? What are some tips to enhance that athlete buy-in, that motivational buy-in that's going to enhance that intrinsic love?
You've mentioned it before, and I wanted to come back to it, but growth mindset. There's a book called Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck, and
Mm,
it's either growth mindset or fixed mindset. Fixed mindset is you're not sure, or you don't think you can improve in something. Well, I wasn't born to do that, or I don't have that skill, or they have that talent and that's not me. That's a fixed mindset. A growth mindset says I'm going to find a way to get it done. I'm going to find a way to get better. I think those are important. I think it's also important to have learn the concept of deliberate practice. And deliberate practice is when you can find the smallest increment of something to work on and practice and do that. I can give lots of examples, but I would say just look up deliberate practice and understand growth mindset. Those two things can take you really far.
mm. And inversely, key skills that a coach needs to know to understand their athlete's mindset a bit more. Like obviously being an athlete yourself, you kind of have that innate understanding, but cultures change, the field that the crafts change, sports change over time, we learn more. What are some key tips from the sports psychology, performance leadership realm that you work in offices, you work with C-suites, you work with coaches? What are some of those more softer skills, I guess you could call them, that they should learn to excel at the next level?
Listening is huge. Asking questions and listening. Um, we believe that we were brought in to teach, but you can really teach better by listening and understanding where your athletes are, and then where you can engage them. So that comes with some humility. We have to be confident and humble at the same time as coaches. We want our athletes to be that way. We want them to be humble and confident. We want them to believe that they're better than their competitors, but humble enough to know that they have to work to be better than their competitors. I think that's what we want in our athletes, and as coaches, we need those same traits and characteristics.
I love that. I couldn't agree more. A few more rapid fires here, and we'll wrap things up. If you could go back and give rookie Pat just one piece of advice, the start of his career, what would it be?
In college,
Yeah, let's go with college. Let's go.
if
You're
we go
wrapping
with
up soon.
college, I'll tell you exactly what it is, and it's something that uh, that I learned my last year, and I learned it from my father, who gave me a piece of advice, and I still have it on a sticky note. So it's like 30 years later or whatever. and it says it's time to finesse. And what he was talking about were those soft skills, those people skills. Um, like I was a carry around a sledgehammer type of person for everything, and you don't need that for all situations. You need to handle some people and some situations with finesse, and you'll get further with that. If I had learned that earlier in my career and developing those relationships with certain coaches and position coaches, the trust that they would have had in me would have given me more opportunity to utilize my ability on the field rather than just trying to outwork everyone and work my way onto the field. I would have learned how to also use relationships to get myself on the field.
Now, you're known as a bit of a barbecue man. I said we'd touch on this in the end. I've followed you for a while. I know you love your barbecues and grilling. There's an argument I've had with many people about the differences between Australian and American barbecue. I'm always told American barbecue is better. You've got one meal that you're putting on the grill to impress someone. You're there coming down, it's the highest person you could possibly think of that's coming over. That meal is to win them over. What are you cooking? What are you throwing on the grill? What's your go-to play?
I made a tomahawk steak the
Oh,
other
oh,
day
oh, oh.
and smoked it low and slow and let the fat just melt and then reverse seared it and put butter and garlic on the top. So we're gonna do that. If they're more of green beans or asparagus, one of those two, and probably some type of potatoes. If I can do that, and then a fresh fruit smoothie to wash it down. That if you're
Oh.
not impressed by that, then I don't know what to do.
I'm already impressed. It's only 7 o'clock in the morning here, 8 o'clock, and I want a steak. Now we're heading to we're coming to America actually for a 2 week trip. We got masterminds, workshops, as colleagues we're meeting up with. We've got 3 days in Texas. What's your biggest recommendation? We're gonna try the authentic Texas barbecue experience. What's the necessary item on the plate we got to get?
You know, there are a few. If you can find for barbecue, and this is a chain, and I don't know, people maybe who are not from there, who are from there might be mad at me, but Rudy's. If you can find a Rudy's, that is one of my favorite places to eat barbecue. Fast food and burgers and shakes. If you can find a Brahms, you're in Texas, Braum, if apostrophe S. If you can find a Brahms, that is those two right there. Yeah, that if I can have both of those in the same day, that's a really good day.
All right, final question to wrap it up. We're going to recommend your book. We're going to put it in the show notes, make sure everyone understands where to find it because we've talked about it a few times. What is one other book not related to yours that you recommend athletes or coaches go and listen to, read, download, podcast, audiobook, don't care? What's one book you think will change their life?
Wow, this one's gonna come off as strange and weird, but it's a book that one of my assistants gave me, and I think it goes to that finesse that he recognized that there were some things I could do, continue to build my relationship building skills, and he gave me the five love languages book.
Oh, okay.
And I read that book, and it basically taught me that people in general, and if I, as a coach, there if you want to speak someone's love language, what it is that really helps you to engage with them. That was a powerful book. That actually changed how I that changed the way I did relationships with people. Because you typically think like what you want and what's your love language might be is what the other person's love language is, and that's not necessarily the case. And to be able to say, okay, what is it that that person needs, and how can I help them to meet that?
Man, I wouldn't have expected. I thought you were going the way you preface that. I thought you were going to say how to win friends and influence people. That's always a very common leadership sort of like, informative book that people recommend. But I didn't see the five love languages coming. That's interesting. I'll take that on board. I didn't see it through that lens. So I've learned something.
Yeah.
Pat, mate, I honestly want to say thank you. This has come full circle. Funny story to wrap this up. My now fiance, about 5 years ago, sent me a piece of your research, and she's like, "I really think that you would connect with this guy, and you guys have a similar approach to sports psychology and how you view things." And we'd only just started the podcast. Said how good would it be one day to have Pat and be able to talk about these concepts and these constructs on a conversation. And 5 years later, when I just took the Hail Mary and I was like, look, we've gone back and forth a few times. I really want to pick your brain. And I think you have the perfect brain of athlete and sports psychologist to do this. And I told her, and she's like, remember when we spoke about this a couple of years ago? And I was like, oh shit, we did
It
too.
was her idea.
I was like, she planted that. I was like, here's me thinking I've had this great idea. I'm going to get Pat Ivey on the podcast. And she's like, oh, I remember that. Mate,
She
thank you
planted the
so
seed.
much. Thank you so much for jumping on. Is there any
Yeah.
way for people to contact you, where to follow you? We'll put the book in the show notes. Is there anything else you want to plug or push or put on display? Let us know, and we'll share it all here. So hit us up with where to find you.
Yeah, just pativey.com, PATIVEY.com. I've got my podcast and other, whether it's other books and courses and information blogs. Uh, it's all there. T-shirts. It's all on my website.
Awesome, man. I truly appreciate your time. Thank you very much. I know it's about 6:30 over there in the evening, so thank you for giving up your afternoon. And mate, I'm looking forward to staying in touch, and we'll share, tag, and drop and all that sort of stuff when this conversation comes out.
Absolutely, I appreciate it, Benjamin. And yeah, we can talk more as soon as we wrap up this. Take care.
Thanks, guys.